Breaking news on the Minnesota Wild front, Adam Beckman sent to New Jersey. He gets his change of scenery. So most importantly, what did the Minnesota Wild get in return?
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Ultimate Hockey GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NHL GM and managing your hockey franchise? Well, now you can with Ultimate Hockey GM. It's completely free, and Locked On listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in the game store. To download the game, just visit hockeygm.app or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate Hockey GM. Start your dynasty today. On today's show, we react to the breaking news that Adam Beckman has been traded to the New Jersey Devils. We'll talk about the return in restricted free agent Graeme Clarke, what he brings to the table, why sometimes change of sceneries happen, and what this means for the Minnesota Wild in the bottom of the roster battle that we expect to see happen here as the season draws closer. So, the news that everybody has heard today, Adam Beckman sent to the New Jersey Devils in a swap for forward Graeme Clarke. And all told for Beckman, played 181 games with the Iowa Wild, 57 goals, 51 assists, 108 total points in those 181 games. Also played in 2 Calder Cup playoff games and scored a goal. All told, Beckman, 569 total shots in the 181 games and shot 10% for his career. So the numbers at the Iowa level certainly told one story. And Beckman was a player who got a couple of opportunities at the NHL level. Now, the extent of those opportunities that were given is certainly one story to take a look at, but all told, Beckman, 23 games at the NHL level. He had 3 assists, 3 total points, and 26 shots on goal in the 23 games. So the big story here is, I think a lot of fans, a lot of listeners are probably frustrated reading this news that Beckman was traded because just never felt like Adam got a legitimate opportunity to just kind of see what he had, what he could contribute to an NHL roster. Obviously, we saw him get opportunities on the fourth line for the most part. He did get a couple of looks in higher roles than that. But you look at the ice times over his 3 different stints with the Minnesota Wild. 10 minutes, 25 seconds in 3 games played in 2021-2022. 10 minutes, 41 seconds in 2022-2023 in a 9-game sample size. And this past season, in 11 games, 9 minutes and 24 seconds of time on ice. Now, is that enough to really gauge what a prospect brings to the table? There are 2 sides to the coin on this. There's the side that, well, if Beckman is going to get an opportunity to show what he's capable of, he's got to earn it. He's got to earn the ability to play higher in the lineup. There's one problem with that notion, is the fact that we had what could have been basically an audition spot on that second line because those 10 shots on goal in 11 games for Beckman, that's a good day. That's a good stretch of games for Marcus Johansson. 10 shots in 11 games. It's not it's not a huge bar that needs to be climbed. It's not like you're asking somebody to try to cross the divide between the Grand Canyon. It's not like there is that high of a bar, like you're asking a prospect to step in and fill Kirill Kaprizov's role on line one. You're just looking to see if some of these young players can step into a spot on the roster and potentially do a little better. And we just never got that with Adam Beckman. And so obviously this is not a surprise. This is something that it seems like has been in the works for a while, because as a player, you look at what Beckman has done over the course of his time with Iowa. He got to Iowa in 2020, 2021, had 3 goals and 2 assists, 5 total points in 9 games. Then in 2021, 2022, he played in 68 games with Iowa. He had 11 goals, 23 assists. 2022, 2023, he had 24 goals and 12 assists, so 36 total points. And then this past season, got a chance to be on the Minnesota Wild roster, went back down to Iowa and really started to pick up right at the point that the Wild roster started to really struggle the most to score, especially in the third and the fourth lines. It seemed like those lines in particular just really struggled to score as the season wore on. And so you look at what Beckman was able to do at the AHL level, and you wonder, well, why couldn't he do that here? I just, that will be the one thing that I kind of take from all of this, is just throw the guy in to a spot that was very easily upgradable and just see what he's capable of. Now, the New Jersey Devils, I think, are a good fit for Adam Beckman, a spot that he can go, and it's a Devils team that prioritizes offense more than they do the defensive side of the puck. And so it's going to be an opportunity for him to just continue to build his game. And look, it's not like he's not a failed player at this point. He's 22 years old. He's got a lot of time to be able to turn himself into an NHL regular. I feel like the reason that this happens was because the Wild just did not look at what he brought to the table and view it as something that was going to help them over these next few years, because Beckman is a restricted free agent. And so you've got a decision to make. You've got a decision to make as to if he's going to be somebody that will be an AHL guy or somebody that can compete for an NHL roster spot. And the Wild just did not view him as somebody that could compete for one of those roster spots consistently. Do I agree with that? We'll really never know, because he was given fill-in spots in, I don't think, the right role over the last couple of years. And so now the Devils get the opportunity to add him into their system, and it won't surprise me at all if he turns out to be somebody that can contribute a little bit at the NHL level. Now, if he doesn't pop, then this move looks like even more of a good idea, because the player that the Wild got in return, he's got some game to him. So I'm actually surprised that this is how this played out. I figured that the Wild would be looking to get a draft pick in return for the rights to sign Adam Beckman. But this, again, is kind of where Bill Guerin works his wonders. He is pretty darn good at taking these types of situations and turning them into a little something. And so we got a lot to discuss as to who exactly Graeme Clarke is, the player acquired by the Minnesota Wild in exchange for Adam Beckman. We'll talk about that as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wilds after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Ultimate Hockey GM. Locked On Wild fans, let's take a second to discuss the mobile game on Ultimate Hockey GM. Have you ever dreamed of becoming an NHL GM and managing your hockey franchise? Do you think you could run the Minnesota Wild better than Bill Guerin has? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is absolutely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the seasons, and lead them to glory. Hire the right coaches and staff, trade players or draft picks, navigate through free agency and the draft, all in a challenging and realistic game world. As Wild fans, we know there is no off season. GMs are constantly making moves at every point of the year to improve their team's chances, and that's why I think you are going to love this game. Ultimate Hockey GM is completely free and playable online. You can play on the go as you want and when you want to. Plus, Locked On Network listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit hockeygm.app. That's hockeygm.app or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate Hockey GM. Start your dynasty today. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. We do have another episode coming up for you later here today. Isha Jerome of the Soda Pod joined us to take a look at the history of the 13th overall pick in the NHL draft. But obviously with this news coming out today, I wanted to get a reaction video up for you to discuss the Adam Beckman for Graeme Clarke trade. Let's dive into Graeme Clarke a little bit here because he is coming to the Minnesota Wild, a 6-foot right-hand shot. Let's look at why a right-hand shot could be potentially important, because if we look at the Minnesota Wild roster, the expanded roster as it currently sits, the Wild have Zach Bogosian, Brock Faber, Freddie Gaudreau, Ryan Hartman, and Vinny Lettieri. That's it. Those are the right-handed shots on the roster right now. So a little balance in the right-handed shot department, certainly not going to hurt anybody. Assuming that Graeme Clarke, and I think he will, gets an opportunity to kind of battle it out for a roster spot in training camp and beyond. So let's look first at some of the things that Elite Prospects has to say. And you may be familiar with the Clarke name, Clarke. Well, that's because Graeme is brother of Brant Clarke. So that's why that name is familiar to you. Here's what Elite Prospects has to say about Graeme Clarke. Graeme's shot is his offensive weapon. He owns a lightning quick release with great velocity and strong accuracy. He plays the game at a high level, combines playmaking ability with a nose for the net. He is also a very gifted puck handler, blending skill with creativity. Those are some thoughts from McKean's Hockey, hockeyprospect.com, and future considerations back in 2019. So here, let's talk about the stats. Ironically, Graeme Clarke is the exact same age as Adam Beckman. And while he's a little shorter than Beckman, he started with the Binghamton Devils, played 31 games back in 2020, 2021. 8 goals, 10 assists, and 18 total points. He then went to the Utica Comets. His first year, 2021, 2022, he had 10 goals, 14 assists, 24 total points in 52 games on 100 shots on goal. So he shot 10% his first season. 2022, 2023 with the Utica Comets. He played 68 games. He scored 25 goals, had 33 assists, 58 total points on 211 shots on goal. Shot 11.8%. Also for the Utica Comets this past season, 67 games played, 25 goals, 24 assists, 49 points, and shot 202 times, shot 12.4%. Also had 8 game-winning goals. Now, the reason that I continue to focus on shots on goal, while it may be viewed as an arbitrary stat, 202 shots on goal, where would that have ranked for the Minnesota Wild this past season? Fourth on the team, ahead of Matt Zuccarello with 173. So this is, I think, probably the thing that I enjoy most about what Graeme Clarke brings to the table. He is a shooter. He is a player with an elite shot. Played in the Calder Cup playoffs this past season. Had 2 goals and 4 assists in 6 games. The year before that, he had 1 goal in 3 Calder Cup playoff games. So in 9 total playoff games, 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 total points, 19 shots in those 6 games in 2023. And you look at some of these games, even when I'll use the opening game of the season, Utica was playing Syracuse on October 13th. Clarke had 1 assist, but he also had 8 shots on goal. Again, is shots on goal the end-all, be-all to determine a player's success at any level of hockey? No. But it's a pretty good way to determine what a player is doing to impact a game. And for this Minnesota Wild team, they need all the scoring help that they can get. And the other thing that I like about this too is you look at Graeme Clarke's numbers over the last couple of seasons, 3 power play goals in 2022, 2023, 4 power play goals in 2023, 2024. So 22 even strength goals, 21 even strength goals this past season, 22 even strength goals in 2022, 2023. Where are that ranked on the Minnesota Wild roster? Second. Just ahead of Matt Boldy and Marco Rossi. I will take all of the even strength scoring help we can get at this point for the Minnesota Wild. And again, this adds depth to the organization. This adds another player that has a shooter's mentality that I think right off the bat is going to be able to contribute and compete for a job on this team for next year. 23 years old, back-to-back 25-goal seasons. He has played 3 games for he did play 3 games for the New Jersey Devils, and I believe recorded an assist. So he is at a similar point to where Adam Beckman was in trying to break through and get to that NHL level. But I just feel like Clarke has put a little bit more on paper to get him to that next level than Beckman did. And you've got 2 guys. You've got a guy in Clarke who maybe felt like he couldn't break through what the New Jersey Devils had on their roster, the wealth of young talent that they had. He felt like he couldn't necessarily break through with New Jersey. He comes here and there are spots on this roster that are up for grabs. And so if Clarke snags one of those, awesome. I feel like he will just add a little bit more to the table than some of the players that we saw filling those roles this past season. It just a little bit more than just somebody filling some minutes, like somebody who is going to come in and not be afraid to shoot the puck, somebody who's going to let it rip, somebody who has a knack for finding the back of the net. I like that. I like to hear that, as opposed to somebody who battles hard and is willing to get their hands dirty along the boards. We got enough of those guys. We got plenty of those types of players in this mix right now. Having somebody that's a shoot first mentality that you can plug into a variety of spots. If he finds the success at the NHL level with his shot, this could work out pretty darn good. And so I know it is frustrating considering that Adam Beckman didn't get a fair shake. I feel like Bill Guerin did pretty good here to get a guy who has, 25 goals in back-to-back seasons at the AHL level. If that's not somebody that's knocking on the door and ready to contribute right now, I don't know what is. So the question, as with a lot of these prospects, the question becomes, does he get that? Does he get that chance to show what he's got at the NHL level? We'll find out, but do not be surprised in the slightest if Graeme Clarke gets an opportunity, gets an extended look at training camp. I'm going to be real fascinated to see what his contract looks like, because the Wild acquiring him as a restricted free agent, you're not going to just let that sort of a player go. Like, he was brought in here because the Wild see something in him, and now it's time to just try to figure out exactly what that is. So I like it. I think this was a good get for Bill Guerin, and I'm excited to see what he can bring to the table for this team. Now, the big question becomes, what are the spots that are open? Because honestly, there are a couple of roster spots that I think are going to be up for grabs for this team. We've talked about it in the past. There are a few spots that are up for grabs. So let's take a look at the spots that are available and the players that will be vying for those particular spots. That is as we finish today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure to join us on Sunday at noon for our next live show, as Denny will be sitting in the GM's chair, making all the roster decisions, making some trades, moving some players on and off the roster. We will go through all of that on Sunday at noon, plus a massive announcement for the first guest of the Sunday show. So stay tuned. Join us at noon. Should be a lot of fun, and we look forward to having you for that. So let's talk about roster spots that are up for grabs, that are open, that are available. I think there are 3 of them right now. And you look at the fourth line. You look at the fourth line combination that the Minnesota Wild had this past season in Vinny Lettieri, Jake Lucchini, and Mason Shaw. Now, reports from Michael Russo suggest that the Wild want to give Shaw a 2-way deal so that he can be kind of a fill-in up or down. If he is receptive to that, he'll probably get it. If he's looking for an NHL contract, it's probably not going to come from here. Jake Lucchini, I just think that's a spot that the Wild can certainly upgrade. And I think Vinny Lettieri, while he obviously had the nice moment where he scored in New York with Lou Nanne on the broadcast, his grandpa, I just feel like that's another spot that could be upgraded as well. And so you look at Graeme Clarke and what he brings to the table, and I think it exceeds. Now, in Mason Shaw's case, he's bringing, I think, a few more intangibles and more on the physical side than the offensive side of the puck. But I think if you give one of those spots to Graeme Clarke, just right off the bat, Give him the opportunity to win one of those spots. Does that mean that he ends up being a fourth line guy? Not necessarily, but it's a roster spot that is right now open and available. I would just take all three of those spots that were on the fourth line and give opportunities to players to grab those spots. As of right now, on cap friendly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 forwards as it currently sits right now. So you subtract the 3. You put Vinny Lettieri down in Iowa. You subtract Lucchini and Shaw. That's 3 spots off of that. That gets you to 11. So you add Clarke into the mix. That brings you up to 12 forwards. Now, you could make a move before the season starts to free up even further spots. But this includes Murat Huznadinov and Liam Ugrin. It includes them in that mix. So then you are leaving 1 spot available for Riley Heights to just take the roster spot and to never look back. So it is still tight. It's a roster that is still pretty well full, but this doesn't include the likes of players like Rasmus Kumpelainen, Luke Toporowski, Hunter Height, some of these guys that will probably get an opportunity in training camp just to see where they're at in their process. But I would say Graeme Clarke vaults to the top of the list as to a player that could come in and take one of those roster spots. And then that's not money being thrown at a free agent. That's not money being thrown at somebody who's a little more veteran to come in and to fill a spot. It's giving a guy an opportunity to come in and to try to win a job. That's, I think, the theme that we should shift to here this season is allowing some of these guys to come in and win a job. Now, on the defensive side, and I've talked about this again, you're pretty well set with Brodin, Spurgeon, Middleton, Bogosian, Merrill, Faber, Chisholm. You're pretty well set with that group. You're probably going to bring somebody else in to fill maybe one spot. But you're pretty well set on defense. And so there may not be a ton of opportunities for those defensive prospects to come in and win jobs as of yet. And I think that's by design. I think that's fine. But there are spots. There are roster spots available on that forward group. And there are players that I think have enough intrigue to be able to step in and to take those spots and to offer you a little upside, to offer you a little energy, a little excitement. Could sure use a dose of that after. And it's not to say we didn't have that last year. It's just there were large stretches in which it was kind of painful to watch. So adding players into the mix that can give you a little excitement, give you a little something to keep an eye on is, I think, a great thing. And so however this works out, if Adam Beckman goes on to be a 20-goal scorer at the NHL level, we're going to look back on this and kind of wonder why that opportunity never happened here. But this is an instance where I like the return that Bill Guerin was able to get in exchange for Adam Beckman. And it's very possible, too, that Graeme Clarke comes in and he turns into something. And you win another opportunity, taking a chance on a guy who just viewed his situation in New Jersey as one that he just didn't have a spot to be able to break through. That opportunity exists here. And so that is, we'll talk as the summer rolls on about storylines to watch as the season draws closer. This could be a big one for the Minnesota Wild. And so the thing that I want to leave you with on the Graeme Clarke front is just remember the shots on goal. 211 shots on goal in 2022-2023, 202 shots on goal this past season. Those marks would have put him 4th on the Minnesota Wild roster without even factoring really anything in. And he would have had a 30-shot lead on Matt Zuccarello for 4th. So even if you would factor in a little bit of a learning curve at the NHL level, you're still talking about a guy who, if he has that volume of shots and shoots at around 11 or 12%, you're adding 25 goals to your mix. That's just basic math. That's just like base level math. And with how we saw the scoring distributed by this Minnesota Wild team this year, that's enough to make an impact. So I like the move. I wish Adam Beckman well in his new organization, the New Jersey Devils. I hope he gets an opportunity to show what he's got at the NHL level. But this is one that we can be excited about as Minnesota Wild fans, because I think Bill Guerin, I think he did well in this situation as opposed to just grabbing a draft pick or grabbing a more veteran AHL guy to kind of throw into the mix. He added a guy that has potential, has impressive scoring skills that can potentially help this team out this year. And considering how some of the other moves we've seen have played out, it's enough to get me excited. So we'll see how that plays out. Of course, we got a lot coming up for you next week to cover the NHL draft. So make sure to subscribe to Locked On Wild so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. You can also find us on your favorite audio platforms, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, you name it, we are on it. We will keep you up to date with new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.